The lightning split the Wyoming sky like a jagged scar as Cole Brennan urged his horse through the worst storm he'd seen in 15 years. Thunder rolled across the prairie, drowning out everything except the hammering of his heart. He was still 3 miles from his homestead when he saw her. A woman, alone, sitting on a trunk beside the muddy road, soaked to the bone, her blue dress plastered against her shivering frame. No horse, no wagon, no shelter for miles in any direction. Cole pulled his horse to a stop, rain streaming down his face. "Ma'am? You hurt?" She looked up, and even through the downpour he could see she'd been crying. Her voice was barely audible over the storm. "He didn't come. The man I was supposed to marry, he never came. Mail-order bride. Abandoned." Cole had heard stories. Men who got cold feet, who advertised for wives and then changed their minds, leaving women stranded in unfamiliar territory with nowhere to go. But he'd never seen it happen. Never imagined finding someone in such desperate circumstances. The woman's eyes met his, and he saw something that made his chest tighten. Not just fear or sadness. Something worse. Hope. Despite everything, she still had hope. "Please," she whispered. "I have nowhere else to go." Question for you. Would you help a stranger in a storm, even if it complicated your entire life? Let me know in the comments. Wyoming Territory, 1889. The Powder River country was unforgiving even in good weather, but during a summer storm like this, it could kill a person in hours. Cole Brennan knew this land. Every creek, every canyon, every hiding place where lightning loved to strike. He'd homesteaded here for 8 years, carved a life from nothing, and learned to respect the territory's savage beauty. But he'd never expected to find a woman abandoned like discarded freight. "Can you stand?" he called over the thunder. She nodded, rising on shaky legs. Her traveling dress was expensive once, he could tell. Fine fabric, careful stitching. Now it was ruined, caked with mud, torn at the hem. A matching hat lay crushed beside the trunk, ribbons trailing in the muddy water pooling around her feet. Cole dismounted, leading his horse closer. "I'm Cole Brennan. Got a homestead 3 miles north. You can't stay out here. Storm's getting worse. I'm Eleanor Walsh." Her accent was Eastern, refined. "Boston maybe, or Philadelphia. I came from New York." The letter said to wait at the crossroads, that Thomas Ashford would meet me at noon. That was... She looked at the darkening sky, lost. "I don't know what time it is now." Cole checked his pocket watch, though he already knew. 5:15. "You've been waiting over 5 hours. Eleanor's composure cracked. The stage driver said he couldn't wait. He had a schedule. "I thought surely Mr. Ashford was just delayed, that he'd come." The letter promised. She didn't finish. The wind picked up, bringing hail that stung like hornets. Cole made a decision. "That trunk too valuable to leave? It's everything I own." He lifted it, lighter than expected, and secured it behind his saddle. Then he turned to Eleanor. "You ever ridden a horse, Miss Walsh?" "In Central Park. With a proper saddle." "This ain't Central Park." He swung up, then extended his hand. "Put your foot on mine and I'll pull you up." Eleanor hesitated only a moment before accepting. She was lighter than the trunk, and once she was settled in front of him, Cole wrapped one arm around her waist to steady her and kicked the horse into motion. The ride to his homestead was brutal. Hail gave way to driving rain. Lightning struck so close Cole smelled the burning sage. Eleanor shook violently. Whether from cold or fear or both, he couldn't tell. He pulled her closer, sharing what warmth he could, and pushed the horse as fast as the conditions allowed. When they finally reached his property, Cole had never been more grateful to see his small cabin. It wasn't much, one room with a sleeping loft, a stone fireplace, and windows he'd made himself. But it was dry and sturdy, and right now that was everything. He helped Eleanor down, grabbed her trunk, and ushered her inside. While she stood dripping on his floor, Cole quickly built up the fire, hung a blanket for privacy, and pulled out his spare clothes. "These'll be too big," he said, handing her a flannel shirt and work pants. "But they're dry." Change and get close to the fire. I'll make coffee. Eleanor took the clothes with trembling hands and disappeared behind the blanket. Cole turned his back, focusing on the practical matters of survival. Stripping off his own wet clothes for dry ones, stoking the fire higher, putting coffee on to boil, checking that the roof wasn't leaking. When Eleanor emerged, she looked smaller somehow. His shirt hung to her knees, the sleeves rolled up multiple times. Her dark hair, freed from its pins, fell in wet waves past her shoulders. She was younger than he'd first thought, maybe 25, with delicate features and eyes the color of storm clouds. "Sit," Cole said, gesturing to the chair nearest the fire. He poured coffee into 2 tin cups and handed her one. "Drink this. You need to warm up from the inside." Eleanor wrapped both hands around the cup, absorbing its heat. For a long moment, neither spoke. The storm raged outside, but inside the cabin was warm and quiet except for the crackling fire. "Thank you," Eleanor finally said. "You saved my life, Mr. Brennan." "Cole. And you saved yourself by having the sense to stay put when the storm hit. Seen folks try to walk in weather like this. They don't make it far." "How long have you lived here?" 8 years. "Built this place myself, acre by acre." He studied her over his coffee cup. "What made you answer a mail-order bride advertisement?" Eleanor's expression closed off slightly. "That's rather personal. So is being stranded on my homestead with a stranger. Seems like we're past polite small talk." She considered this, then nodded slowly. "My father died last year. Gambling debts. They took everything, the house, the furniture, even my mother's jewelry. I had 2 choices, become a governess or find a husband. I chose the latter." "Why Thomas Ashford?" His letters were kind, thoughtful. He described Wyoming as beautiful and wild, full of possibility. He said he needed a wife who was educated, someone who could help him build something meaningful. Her voice cracked. He said he was a man of his word. Cole stood and walked to the window, looking out at sheets of rain. "The crossroads where he was supposed to meet you, that's near the Ashford Ranch. Big spread, maybe 10,000 acres. Thomas Ashford owns it. You know him? Know of him? Inherited the place from his father 2 years back. Keeps to himself mostly." Cole turned back to her. "Which means he didn't forget about you, Miss Walsh. He chose not to come." The words landed like a physical blow. Eleanor set down her cup carefully, as if afraid she might drop it. "I see. I'm sorry. Don't be. It's not your fault." She straightened her shoulders, summoning dignity from somewhere deep. "I'll need to figure out what to do next. Is there a hotel in town? Or perhaps a boarding house? Town's 15 miles east. Has both. But nothing's open tonight. Not in this storm." Cole hesitated. "You can stay here until morning. I'll sleep in the barn." "I couldn't ask you to." "You didn't ask. I'm offering. Storm should break by dawn. I'll take you to town then, help you figure out your next step." Eleanor looked around the small cabin, at this stranger who'd rescued her from certain death, and Cole saw that dangerous hope flicker in her eyes again. "Thank you, Cole, for your kindness." He nodded and grabbed a blanket. "Get some rest, Miss Walsh. Morning comes early out here." As he headed for the barn, Cole wondered what he'd gotten himself into, and why, despite his better judgment, he was already dreading the moment he'd have to take her to town and say goodbye. Cole woke to silence. The storm had passed, leaving behind that peculiar clarity that follows violent weather. Air scrubbed clean, colors vivid, the world remade. He'd spent an uncomfortable night in the barn, listening to rain hammer the roof and thinking about the woman in his cabin. Eleanor Walsh, mail-order bride, abandoned. He shouldn't care. She was a stranger passing through, someone else's problem. But something about the way she'd held on to hope despite everything had gotten under his skin. Cole fed the horses, milked his cow, gathered eggs from the henhouse. Normal morning routine. Except nothing felt normal knowing Eleanor was in his cabin, probably waking up to wonder what came next. When he pushed open the cabin door, the smell of coffee hit him first. Then he saw Eleanor at his stove, cooking. She'd somehow dried and mended her blue dress overnight, pinned her dark hair up properly, and transformed his rough cabin into something almost civilized. Wildflowers, retrieved from who knows where in the aftermath of the storm, sat in a jar on the table. His scattered possessions had been organized. Even the floor looked cleaner. "Morning," she said, not turning from the stove. "I hope you don't mind. I found eggs and some bacon in your cold box. I thought the least I could do was make breakfast." Cole stood in the doorway off balance. "You didn't have to do that. I wanted to. Besides, I was awake before dawn and needed something to occupy my hands." She plated the food with practiced efficiency and gestured to the table. "Please sit." They ate in companionable silence. The eggs were perfectly cooked, the bacon crisp. Eleanor had even found his nearly forgotten jar of jam and spread it on toasted bread. "You're a good cook," Cole said. "My mother insisted I learn, despite having a cook. She said a woman should know how to feed herself and her family, regardless of social position." Eleanor smiled sadly. "One of the few practical things I learned before everything fell apart." Cole pushed scrambled eggs around his plate. "About going to town, there's something you should know. I have no money." She said it flatly, stating a fact. "The train ticket from New York cost almost everything I had. I was depending on Mr. Ashford's promise. The boarding house owner, Mrs. Chun, she's a good woman. Might extend credit until you can find work." What kind of work exists in a Wyoming frontier town for an educated woman with no references and no connections? It was a fair question. Cole thought about Iron Creek, the nearest town, population maybe 300. Most women there were wives and mothers running households. The few working women were either saloon girls or doing laundry. Neither seemed appropriate for someone like Eleanor. "Could teach," he offered. "Town's been trying to get a proper school started." "With what credentials?" "I was educated, yes, but I'm not a trained teacher. And who would hire an abandoned mail-order bride? The scandal alone would disqualify me." She was right, and they both knew it. In frontier society, a woman's reputation was everything. Being abandoned like rejected goods would follow her everywhere. Cole made a decision he'd probably regret. "You could stay here." Eleanor looked up sharply. "I beg your pardon?" "Just temporarily," he added quickly. "Until you figure things out. I could use help with the homestead anyway. Garden needs tending, chickens need managing, cabin needs proper cleaning. You'd earn your keep, and it'd give you time to make a plan." "Mr. Brennan, Cole, that's incredibly generous, but I couldn't possibly. People would talk. Your reputation." "I don't care much about reputation. Out here, what matters is whether you work hard and keep your word. Everything else is just noise." Eleanor studied him across the table. "Why are you helping me? You don't know anything about me." "I could be a terrible person." "Could be," Cole agreed. "But I don't think so. And truth is, this place gets lonely. Having someone around who can cook like this and knows how to arrange flowers." He gestured at the jar on the table. "Wouldn't mind that for a while. I can't pay you. Didn't ask you to. Like I said, you'd earn your keep." Eleanor was quiet for a long moment, and Cole could see her weighing options. Finally, she spoke. "If I stay, and I'm not saying I will, what exactly would the arrangement be?" "You'd have the cabin. I'd sleep in the barn." "That's not sustainable. Winter comes early here, doesn't it?" "I'll build a lean-to addition. Extra room. Make it proper." Cole stood, clearing dishes. "But that's getting ahead of ourselves. Why don't you stay a few days, see how it feels? If it doesn't work out, I'll take you to town, help you find something else." Eleanor rose as well, looking around the cabin that was surprisingly transformed by her presence. "A few days," she agreed, "to see how it feels." They spent the morning assessing storm damage. Several fence posts were down, the chicken coop had lost part of its roof, and one of the irrigation ditches had flooded over. Cole worked on the fences while Eleanor tackled the chickens, showing surprising competence despite her fancy background. By noon, they were both sweating in the July sun. Cole pumped water at the well while Eleanor wiped her brow, leaving a streak of dirt across her face. "This is harder than I expected," she admitted. "Homesteading's not for the faint of heart." "I'm not faint of heart, Mr. Brennan. Just inexperienced." She rolled up her sleeves further. "But I learn quickly." That evening, they sat on the porch steps watching the sun set over the prairie. The storm had broken the heat wave, leaving the air pleasant and cool. Eleanor had made stew for dinner, somehow transforming his basic supplies into something memorable, and they ate watching the sky turn colors neither could name. "My father used to say sunsets were God's apology for difficult days," Eleanor said quietly. "Sounds like a wise man." "He was, just not wise enough to avoid gambling away his fortune." She paused. "I was angry at him for a long time, for leaving me with nothing, for making choices that destroyed our family. But watching this sunset, I wonder if maybe he gave me something valuable after all." "What's that?" "The ability to start over, to build something from nothing." She looked at Cole. "Like you did here." Cole wanted to say something meaningful, but words weren't his strength. So instead, he just nodded and sat with her as the stars began to emerge, one by one, in the darkening sky. And for the first time in years, his homestead didn't feel quite so lonely. 3 days became a week. A week became 2. Eleanor settled into homestead life with a determination that surprised Cole. She woke before dawn, tackled every task with focused intensity, and never complained, even when the work left her hands blistered and her muscles aching. Cole found himself adjusting his routines to accommodate her presence. He started the lean-to addition, framing out a small room that would give them both proper privacy. Eleanor helped where she could, holding boards steady while he nailed, learning carpentry basics alongside him. They developed an easy rhythm. Cole handled the heavy work, plowing fields, mending fences, managing livestock. Eleanor took over the cabin, garden, and chickens. But the division wasn't rigid. Sometimes Cole found Eleanor hauling water alongside him. Sometimes he helped her weed the vegetable garden. On their 15th day together, Eleanor spoke up during breakfast. "I've been thinking about Mr. Ashford." Cole's coffee cup paused halfway to his mouth. They hadn't discussed Thomas Ashford since that first morning. "What about him? I want to know why he didn't come. I deserve an explanation, don't you think?" It was a reasonable request, but Cole felt uneasy. His ranch is 10 miles south. Big operation. He might not even be there, could be out with his herds. "Then I'll wait until he returns." Eleanor's jaw set in a way Cole was beginning to recognize. Once she decided something, she didn't back down. "Will you take me?" Cole wanted to refuse. Something about the situation bothered him, though he couldn't articulate why. But Eleanor had a right to answers. "All right, we'll go tomorrow." The ride to the Ashford Ranch revealed territory Cole rarely visited. Thomas Ashford's spread was impressive, thousands of acres of prime grazing land. A large ranch house, multiple barns and outbuildings, dozens of hired hands. The kind of operation that represented serious money and power. A ranch hand directed them to the main house, where Thomas Ashford himself emerged. He was Cole's age, mid-30s, with carefully groomed appearance and expensive clothes that marked him as successful. His expression shifted from polite curiosity to horror when he saw Eleanor. "Miss Walsh? What are you doing here?" Eleanor dismounted with as much dignity as possible in borrowed work pants. "I came for an explanation, Mr. Ashford. You promised to meet me at the crossroads 3 weeks ago. You never came." Ashford's face reddened. There was a misunderstanding." "What kind of misunderstanding requires abandoning someone in a storm with no shelter and no resources?" "I sent a telegram to New York," Ashford said defensively. "Told you not to come. You should have received it before you left." "I received no telegram. That's not my fault. I tried to warn you." "Why?" Eleanor interrupted. "Your letters were so enthusiastic. You said you wanted an educated wife, someone to share your life. What changed?" Ashford wouldn't meet her eyes. "My mother changed it. When I told her I'd sent for a mail-order bride, She had concerns. About propriety, about family expectations. She arranged a match with Senator Morrison's daughter instead. Better connected. Better suited to our social position. The words hung in the air like accusations. Cole watched Eleanor absorb this, that she'd been discarded for someone with better connections, that her education and character meant nothing compared to social climbing. I see, Eleanor said quietly. And it didn't occur to you to send more than one telegram? To ensure I received word before traveling 2,000 miles. You assumed wrong, Mr. Ashford. You made promises and broke them. You left me stranded with nothing. Her voice stayed steady, but Cole saw her hands shaking. I hope your politically advantageous marriage brings you happiness. Good day. She turned and walked back to the horses with perfect posture. Chin high. Cole followed, rage simmering in his chest. Men like Ashford, men who treated people as disposable when convenient, made him sick. They were halfway home before Eleanor spoke. I was so foolish, believing his letters, thinking I could build a life with a stranger. I should have known better. You weren't foolish. You were hopeful. There's a difference. Hope is a luxury I can't afford anymore. Cole pulled his horse to a stop. Don't say that. Hope's what got you through that storm. Hope's what makes you get up every morning and work until your hands bleed. Don't let one selfish bastard take that from you. Eleanor looked at him, really looked, and something shifted between them. Not romance, it was too soon, too complicated for that. But recognition. Two people who'd been hurt by life, trying to build something better from broken pieces. Thank you, Cole, for everything. They rode the rest of the way in silence. That night, Cole made a decision. He found Eleanor in the garden, harvesting vegetables by the last light. I've been thinking, he started awkwardly, about your situation. What about it? You can't stay here indefinitely without it being proper. People will talk. Reputation will suffer. Yours and mine both. Eleanor straightened. Vegetables forgotten. Are you asking me to leave? No. I'm asking you to stay. Permanently. He took a breath. Marry me. The words fell like stones into still water. Eleanor stared at him. Marry you? Cole, we barely know each other. We know enough. I know you work hard. Keep your word. And make the best coffee I've ever tasted. You know I'm honest, won't mistreat you, and can provide a decent life. That's more than most marriages start with. This isn't fair to you. You're offering out of kindness, not love. Maybe, but kindness is a good foundation. Love can come later if we're lucky. And if it doesn't, Cole shrugged, we'll still have partnership, respect, a life we built together. Eleanor was quiet for a long time. I don't want to be someone's obligation. You're not. You're someone I want to build a future with. There's a difference. She looked at the cabin, the garden she'd planted, the life taking shape around them. Can I think about it? Take all the time you need. But Cole saw the answer in her eyes before she spoke it. Hope, that dangerous thing, flickering to life again. Eleanor gave her answer 3 days later, at dawn, while they worked side by side fixing a stubborn fence post. Yes. Cole looked up from the post hole he was digging. Yes, what? Yes, I'll marry you, if the offer still stands. It did. Though now that she'd accepted, Cole felt the weight of what he'd proposed. Marriage, partnership, forever, with a woman he'd known less than a month. We should do it properly, Eleanor continued, brushing dirt from her hands. Not a rushed affair. Give ourselves time to prepare, to be certain. How much time? A month? Long enough to make arrangements, announce our intentions. Let people get used to the idea before we actually... She trailed off, suddenly uncertain. Cole understood. They were strangers still, in many ways. Sharing a life was one thing. Sharing everything else required trust neither had fully developed yet. A month works, he agreed. Gives me time to finish the lean-to addition, make the cabin more suitable for 2 people. And we should go to town, let people know. Make it official-like. That Sunday they rode to Iron Creek together. The town was small but bustling. A general store, saloon, church, livery stable, and scattered houses. Everyone knew everyone else's business, which meant their arrival together sparked immediate interest. Cole headed straight for Reverend Samuel's house. The minister was a practical man in his 60s who'd seen frontier life in all its complexity. He listened to their story without judgment. "You're certain about this?" he asked Eleanor. "Marriage is a serious commitment, especially when circumstances are unusual." "I'm certain. Cole has shown me more integrity and kindness than anyone I've known. That's a foundation I can build on." Reverend Samuel turned to Cole. "And you? You're prepared to take on a wife you barely know." "I know enough. She's honest, works hard, and deserves a chance at a decent life. I can give her that." The minister studied them both, then nodded slowly. "All right, I'll post the banns starting this Sunday. You'll marry in 4 weeks, giving time for any objections to be raised." "Objections?" Eleanor looked worried. "What kind of objections?" "Standard procedure. Anyone who knows legal reason why you shouldn't marry has the right to speak up. Won't be an issue in your case. You're both free to marry, no impediments I can see." They left the minister's house to find half the town waiting outside, curiosity barely contained. Mrs. Chun from the boarding house was first to approach. "Cole Brennan, getting married? Never thought I'd see the day." She turned to Eleanor with sharp eyes that saw everything. "You're the mail-order bride Ashford abandoned." It wasn't a question. Eleanor lifted her chin. "I am." "Well, you're better off. That Ashford boy has too much pride and not enough substance." Mrs. Chin smiled. "Cole's a good man, keeps to himself mostly, but honest and hardworking. You could do worse." Other introductions followed. The blacksmith, the store owner, the doctor. Some were genuinely welcoming. Others were clearly skeptical about a fancy Eastern woman marrying a struggling homesteader. But no one was openly hostile, which Cole counted as a victory. At the general store, Eleanor browsed with wide eyes. Cole realized she hadn't seen a store, hadn't seen anything beyond his homestead, in weeks. "Choose some fabric," he said. "For a wedding dress." Eleanor touched a bolt of cream-colored calico. "Simple but nice." "This is too expensive." "Not for a wedding. Choose what you like." She selected the cream calico plus matching thread and buttons. Cole added supplies they'd need: coffee, sugar, flour, some canned goods, and paid without complaint. Money was tight, but not so tight he couldn't provide properly for his future wife. On the ride home, Eleanor was quiet. "Regretting it already?" Cole asked. "No, just thinking. Everyone in town knows I was abandoned. Knows this is a marriage of convenience. They'll be watching, waiting to see if we fail. Let them watch. We know the truth, we're building something real, even if it started unconventionally." Eleanor smiled slightly. "You have more faith than I do. One of us has to." The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Cole finished the lean-to addition, creating a proper bedroom with a real door for privacy. Eleanor sewed her wedding dress by lamplight, transforming simple calico into something genuinely beautiful. They worked together, improving the cabin, the garden, the whole homestead. And slowly, carefully, they learned each other. Cole discovered Eleanor loved thunderstorms, that she sang while working, that she was fiercely intelligent and deeply lonely. Eleanor learned Cole was quieter than he seemed, that he'd lost his parents young and built his homestead as a way to prove he could survive anything, that beneath his practical exterior was someone who noticed small things: wildflowers, sunsets, the way she took her coffee. The night before the wedding, they sat on the porch as usual, watching stars emerge. "Are you nervous?" Eleanor asked. "Some." "You?" "Terrified." She laughed softly. "Tomorrow I become Mrs. Cole Brennan. It feels impossible and inevitable at the same time. We can still call it off, if you're having doubts." "Are you?" Cole considered. "No. Scared maybe, but not doubting. This feels right, even if it started wrong." Eleanor reached over and took his hand, the first time she'd initiated physical contact. Her fingers were small and work-roughened now, no longer the soft hands of an Eastern lady. I promise to be a good wife, Cole. To work hard, to be honest, to build this life with you properly. I promise the same, to provide for you, protect you, treat you with respect. And if love comes, he squeezed her hand, we'll welcome it when it does. They sat holding hands until the stars filled the sky, two people about to bind their lives together on nothing more than hope and hard work. The next morning, Eleanor put on her cream calico dress, pinned wildflowers in her dark hair, and became someone's wife. Not someone who'd abandoned her, someone who'd chosen her. That, she thought as Cole slipped a simple gold band on her finger, made all the difference. Marriage changed things, though not in ways Cole expected. Eleanor was his wife now, legally and officially, but they maintained separate bedrooms and careful boundaries. The physical aspects of marriage remained unspoken territory neither was ready to navigate. Instead, they focused on partnership. August brought intense heat and the hard work of harvest. They worked dawn to dusk bringing in crops, potatoes, carrots, beans, corn. Eleanor learned to preserve food, filling jars with vegetables for winter. Cole taught her to smoke meat, to identify which wild plants were edible, to read the weather signs that meant rain or frost. In turn, Eleanor transformed the homestead in subtle ways. She started a small herb garden near the cabin. She organized the barn, labeling everything, creating systems that made daily work more efficient. She kept detailed records of supplies, expenses, and income in a ledger, showing Cole areas where they could save money. "You're good with numbers," he observed one evening, watching her calculate seed costs. "My father taught me bookkeeping before he lost himself in gambling. It was one of the few useful skills I learned." She made a notation. "We could increase profits if we focused on the chicken operation. Eggs sell well in town, and we have space to expand the coop. That's your project then. Whatever you need, we'll make it work." Eleanor looked up, surprised. "You're giving me control over part of the operation? It's your homestead too now. Should have a say in how it runs." Something shifted in Eleanor's expression. Recognition that she wasn't just a helper but a true partner. She threw herself into the chicken project with characteristic intensity, researching breeds, designing an expanded coop, negotiating prices with the store owner in town. Within 6 weeks, their egg production had tripled. The extra income wasn't huge, but it was Eleanor's contribution, proof she could build something of value. September brought an unexpected visitor. Cole was repairing the barn roof when a wagon rolled up the road. The driver was a woman in her 50s, well-dressed, with the bearing of someone used to authority. Eleanor emerged from the cabin, wiping flour from her hands. "Can I help you? I'm looking for Mrs. Eleanor Brennan. I was told she lives here." "I'm Eleanor Brennan." The woman's eyes widened slightly. "I'm Catherine Morrison, Senator Morrison's wife." The name registered immediately. Senator Morrison, whose daughter had married Thomas Ashford instead of Eleanor. Cole climbed down from the roof, suddenly wary. "Mrs. Morrison," Eleanor said carefully, "what brings you to our homestead?" Catherine Morrison dismounted with practiced grace. "I came to apologize. I recently learned the full story of what Mr. Ashford did to you. Abandoning you without proper notice, leaving you stranded. It's unconscionable. And I wanted you to know that not everyone condones such behavior." Eleanor recovered her composure. "That's kind of you, but unnecessary." The situation resolved itself. "Nevertheless, I felt compelled to make the trip. When I think of my own daughter, what could have happened if she'd been treated so callously?" Catherine shook her head. "You showed remarkable strength, Mrs. Brennan. Not many women could have survived what you endured." "I didn't survive alone. My husband helped me." Eleanor glanced at Cole with something like pride. "He's a good man." Catherine's gaze shifted to Cole, assessing. "I can see that. And I understand you've built quite a successful operation here, despite the challenges." They invited Catherine inside for coffee. The conversation was stilted at first, but gradually became more natural. Catherine was genuinely interested in their homestead, asking intelligent questions about their methods and plans. Before she left, Catherine made an unexpected offer. The senator and I host a harvest dinner every October. Local ranchers, business owners, community leaders. I'd like to invite you both. Cole started to decline. Fancy dinners weren't his style, but Eleanor spoke first. We'd be honored, Mrs. Morrison. Thank you. After Catherine's wagon disappeared down the road, Cole turned to Eleanor. Why'd you accept? You know we don't fit in with that crowd. Exactly why we should go. We're building something here, Cole. A real life, a real operation. People need to see us as legitimate, not just some charity case or scandal. The harvest dinner is an opportunity to establish ourselves properly. She was right, though Cole dreaded it. October arrived with crisp air and changing leaves. The harvest dinner loomed. Eleanor spent their limited funds on fabric for a proper dress, something suitable for society without being pretentious. She sewed by lamplight, creating a dark green gown that was simple, elegant, and entirely her own design. Cole borrowed a suit from the general store owner, who kept one for funerals and weddings. The Morrison estate was intimidating, a large house by frontier standards with multiple rooms and actual glass windows. Dozens of guests mingled on the lawn, dressed in their finest. Cole immediately felt out of place. Then he saw Thomas Ashford. Ashford was there with his new wife, Senator Morrison's daughter. She was young, pretty, and looked utterly bored. Ashford himself seemed uncomfortable, his eyes constantly searching for escape routes. When Ashford noticed Eleanor, his face went pale. Mrs. Brennan. I didn't expect to see you here. Life is full of surprises, Mr. Ashford. Eleanor's voice was perfectly polite, perfectly cold. I don't believe you've met my husband, Cole Brennan. Cole shook Ashford's hand, squeezing just hard enough to make a point. Heard a lot about you. I'm sure you have. Ashford couldn't meet his eyes. Well, I should stay, Eleanor interrupted. I wanted to thank you, actually. Ashford looked confused. Thank me? For not coming that day. For abandoning me at the crossroads. If you'd kept your promise, I would have married you and been miserable. Instead, I married a good man who treats me with respect, who sees me as a partner, not an ornament or social climbing tool. So thank you, Mr. Ashford. Your failure was my greatest fortune. She smiled, took Cole's arm, and walked away, leaving Ashford speechless. Later, dancing under strings of lanterns, Cole whispered, That was magnificent. I meant every word. You are a good man, Cole Brennan. You're not so bad yourself, Eleanor Brennan. They danced until the stars came out. Two people who'd built something real from nothing, and weren't finished yet. Winter came early and hard. By November, snow blanketed the Wyoming prairie, and temperatures dropped below zero. Cole and Eleanor settled into the rhythm of cold-weather homesteading, feeding livestock in blizzards, breaking ice on water troughs, keeping the fire constantly burning. They also settled into the rhythm of marriage. It happened gradually, almost without notice. Cole started staying in the cabin later at night, talking with Eleanor by the fire instead of retreating to his separate room. Eleanor began touching his hand when she passed, straightening his collar, small gestures of affection that felt natural rather than forced. One December night, during a particularly brutal storm, Cole woke to find Eleanor standing in his doorway. I can't sleep, she said quietly. The wind sounds like screaming. Come sit by the fire. I'll make coffee. They sat together on the worn sofa Cole had built, wrapped in quilts, listening to the storm rage outside. Eleanor's head gradually drooped onto his shoulder. Can I ask you something? She murmured, half asleep. Anything. When you found me that first night, why did you stop? Most men would have kept riding. Cole considered. My ma used to say that character is what you do when no one's watching and nothing's required. Leaving you there would have been easier, but it wouldn't have been right. And I guess I wanted to be the kind of man who does right, even when it's hard. You are that man, Cole. You've proven it every day since. She fell asleep there on his shoulder, and Cole didn't have the heart to wake her. He carefully carried her to her bed, tucked her in, and returned to his own room feeling something shift in his chest. This wasn't convenience anymore. It wasn't just partnership. He was falling in love with his wife. Christmas came. They had little money for gifts, but Eleanor made Cole a shirt from fabric scraps, perfectly fitted with careful stitching. Cole carved her a jewelry box from cedar wood, simple but beautiful, with her initials burned into the lid. "It's lovely," Eleanor whispered, tracing the letters. "I don't have jewelry anymore, but someday you will," Cole promised. "When this place is profitable, when we've made it work, I'll buy you jewelry worthy of that box." Eleanor kissed his cheek, the first time she'd done so voluntarily. "I don't need jewelry, Cole. I just need this. The life we're building." January brought a crisis. Cole was checking fence lines when his horse stumbled in hidden ice. He fell hard, felt something in his leg snap, and knew immediately it was bad. He managed to get back to the cabin, his legs screaming with every movement. Eleanor took one look and rode for the doctor, pushing through dangerous conditions to get help. The break was clean but serious. The doctor said it, warned Cole to stay off it for at least 6 weeks, and left Eleanor with instructions and laudanum for pain. 6 weeks, Cole said when the doctor left. "That's the whole winter. How are we going to manage?" "We'll manage," Eleanor said firmly. "I'm not helpless, Cole. I can handle the livestock, the chores. You'll rest and heal." She was true to her word. Every morning, Eleanor bundled up against brutal cold and tackled work Cole had always done himself. She fed cattle, broke ice, hauled water. She came back exhausted, fingers numb, but never complained. Cole watched her transform from a fancy Eastern woman into a true frontier wife. The change wasn't just external. Though her hands were now rough, her face sun-weathered. It was deeper. She'd found strength she never knew she had. One evening, after particularly hard work, Eleanor collapsed into the chair by the fire, too tired to even remove her coat. "I used to think I was strong," she said. "Back in New York, when I survived my father's death and the loss of everything. But that wasn't strength. That was just enduring. This is different. This is choosing difficulty, choosing hard work, choosing to build something despite the cost." "You're the strongest person I know," Cole said honestly. Eleanor looked at him, and something in her eyes made his breath catch. "I love you, Cole. I didn't mean to, didn't plan to, but I do. You've shown me what real partnership looks like, what real integrity means." And somewhere along the way, convenience became something more. Cole had waited months to hear those words, afraid to hope they'd ever come. "I love you too. Have for a while now, if I'm honest." "Then why didn't you say anything?" "Didn't want to pressure you. Figured you'd come to it in your own time or not at all. Either way, I was committed to making this work." Eleanor crossed the room and kissed him properly for the first time. Not a peck on the cheek, but a real kiss that promised everything they'd been avoiding. "I'm ready," she whispered, "for all of it. The real marriage, the partnership, the future. I'm ready to build it with you." That night, their marriage became complete in every way. And it felt right, not rushed or forced, but the natural progression of two people who'd earned each other's trust through hard work and honesty. February brought Cole's recovery. His leg healed strong, and he returned to work alongside Eleanor. But their dynamic had changed. They worked as true equals now, each compensating for the other's weaknesses, celebrating each other's strengths. March arrived with the first signs of spring. As snow melted and green shoots appeared, Cole and Eleanor stood in their field, planning the year's crops. "We should expand," Eleanor said. "The chicken operation is profitable. We could add more, maybe start selling in other towns. And we'll need a bigger cabin eventually," Cole added. "If we're going to have a family?" Eleanor smiled. "Is that what you want?" "If you do, I do. I want children who grow up knowing hard work, honest living, and parents who love each other. I want to build something that lasts." Cole pulled her close, looking at their homestead. The cabin they'd improved together, the fields they'd planted, the life they'd built from nothing but hope and determination. A year ago, he'd found an abandoned woman in a storm. Now she was his wife, his partner, his future. The woman who'd arrived with nothing but hope had proven that hope was enough. When combined with hard work, honesty, and love. "We'll build it together," he promised. "Everything we want, everything we need, one day at a time." Eleanor kissed him, tasting of coffee and possibility. "That's all I ever wanted. A partner who keeps his promises." "Then you chose right, Mrs. Brennan." "We both did, Mr. Brennan. We both did." They walked back to the cabin hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next. Because they'd learned the most important lesson the frontier could teach, that the strongest foundations are built on hope, hard work, and the courage to trust another person completely. The storm that brought them together was long past, but the life they'd built in its aftermath was just beginning. The end.